Our boys are a little confused. They don't really know where they're from. It depends on which day you ask them. You know, some days they're from West Virginia. That's where the family's from. And so, you know, we get all these things that come from West Virginia. And some days they're from Texas. You know, they moved here from Texas, and so sometimes we're from Texas. And sometimes it's from Philadelphia. They were born in Philadelphia. And we kind of remember the UPS. That's what I did in Philadelphia, and that's where I was. And so they kind of look at that and think, you know, oh, that's where Dad worked. Some days they're even from Greenville, you know, North Carolina. And yeah, that's here. This is several weeks ago. Jonathan and Amos were talking, and you know, they were exchanging one back and forth, and Amos said, "Well, we are Scottish after all." They've never even been to Scotland. You know, I went for a mission trip, but you know, our families back generations, you know, one line of it came from Scotland. And so, you know, that's who we are. That's who we're made up from. And Tracy went to a homeschool thing, and she had this UTA mug. And a lady there said, "Why are you drinking from that? Where are you from? What's the deal?" She said, "Well, we moved here from Texas, but we're originally from West Virginia." "You mean you actually grew up in West Virginia?" She said, "Yes. I never met anybody that's from West Virginia that, you know, grew up there. And people go there to retire, and, you know, it's..." Tracy said, "No, we're from West Virginia." She said, "Well then, do you sing that Mountain Mama song?" "Yes, we know that song. My nieces and my nephew, the little kids, know that song. They're from Indiana. They were born in Indiana. But they know country roads. It's just like required if you're from West Virginia. You know country roads and the lyrics." This John Denver made an appearance one time in a Mountaineer football game. And he, you know, walked out onto the field and was introduced. He has 60,000 fans singing country roads to him. We make all these kind of different connections. You know, I get all this stuff. You know, my parents don't want me to forget where I'm from, so they gave me the football and they gave me this. And so I got the license plate, you know, from West Virginia. Anybody want to be an honorary? I got some free T-shirts. Anybody want to be an honorary West Virginia? I've only got 2. Sorry. So many others want to be West Virginians. There we go. But we make connections with other West Virginians. You know, you drive around town and you see a West Virginia license plate. And we think, I wonder where they're from. And even, you know, pull up beside people and say, you know, "Where are you from?" You guys see those license plates, think, "Where are they from?" And you answer, "West Virginia." Right? We want to know kind of where in West Virginia. And we find those connections. Now, it's a little bit different. We went home a couple weeks ago for my grandmother's funeral. I don't drive around and say, hey, there's a West Virginia license plate. Oh, there's another one. And another one. And everybody's from West Virginia here. You start noticing that because it's something different. You don't drive around town here and say, oh, look, North Carolina license plate. You know, it's like everybody's got those. But we start making these connections with people that there's something in common with, something that we have. And you know, you're somewhere else and you say, oh, you're from Greenville. I'm from Greenville too. You know, and we make these connections with people based on these similarities that we have with them, based on a common history, based on a common identity that we share together. People that we encounter will think things about us. They'll think, you're a Christian. Yes, I'm a Christian. Oh, well, then you must be. And they have a list. Sometimes those lists are negative. You must be bigoted. You must be homophobic. You must think you're better than everybody else. You're a Christian. And some of that's probably on us. Some of it's not. Some things, though, are positive. You're a Christian. You must be forgiving. You must be loving. You must be benevolent. You know, why do people get in financial trouble and think to call a church to pay their electric bill or to ask for food? You know, they're not doing that, as far as I'm aware, to anyone else. You get a lot of calls of Grady White saying, you know, I can't pay my electric bill. Can you give me some money? They don't do that. Why not? That's not what Grady White does, but Christians at least have a reputation for helping people, for being benevolent. And so that's where they go for help. That's who they look to when they're in trouble. A lot of these people, they don't have any kind of connection to a church or to God sometimes. And yet they have this idea that if I'm in trouble, I can call a church and somebody there can help me. We're going to start a series, starting it today, the book of Deuteronomy. So go ahead and turn over to the book of Deuteronomy. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 5th book in the Bible. Deuteronomy is the second law. Exodus is the first giving of the law, and then we've got Deuteronomy. This is Moses' final sermon, his last instruction. He's going to give these words to Israel, and then he's going to go up onto the mountain and die. This is it. This is the last thing he can share with his people. He knows he's not going with them into the promised land. He knows they're going to miss his presence, and so he leaves with them these words of instruction, these words to encourage them, these words to lead them, to guide them, and substitute for his presence. And so the first thing that he does in Deuteronomy is a recounting of the past. He reminds the Israelites of all that God has done for them. Just look through chapter 1, 2, and 3. We're just going to kind of skip through some different things. Look at chapter 1, verse 6. The Lord our God said to us at Horeb, you have stayed long enough at this mountain. Break camp and advance into the hill country of the Amorites. Go to all the neighboring peoples of the Arabah in the mountains, in the western foothills, in the Negev and along the coast, to the land of the Canaanites, and to Lebanon, as far as the great river, the Euphrates. I'm giving you this land, and I want you to go there. And he says in verse 9, we appointed leaders. The group was too big for Moses to govern himself, and so they picked out different leaders. And different tribes and different families, and he would tell them what to say, and they would tell the people what to say, and when the people needed judgment, needed to know what to do, they came back to them. And if it was too difficult for them, they passed it on up the line until it got to Moses, and Moses could inquire of God. They picked leaders for the people of Israel. Verse 19, he says, we got to the promised land and we decided to send spies out. And they went and they saw that the land was good. Everything God had done, everything God had promised, it looked great. And then verse 26, but you were unwilling to go up. You rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. You grumbled in your tents and you said, the Lord hates us. So he brought us out of Egypt to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. And you wouldn't go up. And so God said, none of you are going to go into the land. And then you changed your mind and you tried to go anyway. And God punished you for that. Chapter 2, he talks about, we wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And then chapter 2, verse 24, we defeated Sihon, king of Heshbon. Chapter 3, we defeated Og, king of Bashan. They divided up the land that was east of the Jordan. And now they're ready to cross the river. But the thing that Moses wants them to remember is their past. Where did they come from? What did they do? How had God been with them? I've got a few other things in my basket here. Well, one is this quilt. This is from Tracy's great-grandmother. Been in the family a long time. And here's her, this is a drawer from her sewing machine. Tracy pulled it out this morning, and so there are some directions in here, and there are little scraps of fabric, and I don't know if some of these might match. Maybe not. But she had to be frugal. She had to say, we're not in the same circumstances. I would probably not say that today. But some of you have been through times when you saved everything you could, when every scrap was used, everything was made use of. There are other things. Her snuff can is in there. We don't really use that anymore. And this is one of Grandma Fitzwater. This was her cup when she was growing up. And we've got other things. I've got my grandfather's lunch pail that he took into the mines every day. I've got one of his hard hats that has the reflective tape on it that he worked in the coal mines in West Virginia. It is part of who we are. It's part of what makes us up. And as Christians, as people of God, we tell each other these stories and remind ourselves of our past because it's what makes us up. Talk about my nieces and nephews. They sing Country Roads, but they're not really from West Virginia. But they have that connection, and so we pass the stories down because it's something that identifies us. Moses wanted the people of Israel to remember where they came from. These people that are crossing over into the land, they weren't really at Mount Horeb. They weren't there to rebel when it was time to enter the land. But Moses tells them the stories anyway. You were there, you were there, you were there, because it's who they are. Moses tells the people, don't forget. Don't forget. It wasn't because they were powerful. It wasn't because they were important. It wasn't because they were more holy and righteous than the other people around them. God chose them because He loved them. He says, do not forget. Do not forget. Our past shapes our identity. The Hebrews we were reading last week. Do not forget those that have gone before you. Chapter 11. Today, chapter 12. We're talking about this great cloud of witnesses that surrounds us. Do not forget. You're not alone. There are others that have walked the path ahead of you. They have done it well. They have done it faithfully, and you can follow them. I thought, well, what are Christians not to forget? Well, we remember that Christ died for us, that our lives are now hidden in Christ, that others have walked this path before us, and that we can look to their example. But there's also another aspect of this. We had Philippians 3 read for us, right? Paul says, forgetting what is behind and pressing on towards what is ahead. Forgetting what is behind. But Paul says that, but he doesn't really forget. He's still able to remember where he came from. There are other places he talks about it. He says, are these other people, are they Hebrews? Well, I'm Hebrew too. They think they're Israelites? I'm an Israelite. I'm from the tribe of Benjamin. I was born on the seventh day. He's got all the history down. I was a Pharisee. He didn't forget. But he's saying there that I don't let the past control the present. I remember where I came from. And it helps identify who I am. But it doesn't control who I will be. In Christ, we have that hope of being in Him, being His person. Paul doesn't forget. He moves on from there. He doesn't let the past overwhelm the present in a negative way. This week, I want you to make a timeline of your life. What's your past look like? What are the events that have shaped you? Who are the people that have been influential in your life? And mark those out. Remember what God has done for you. The Israelites were able to look back at the past and say, God provided for us. God took care of us. God freed us from the Egyptians. He provided for us a way of escape through the Red Sea. He provided a way against the Pharaoh's army. He provided food, manna in the wilderness. He provided water when we were thirsty. He provided quail when we got tired of manna. We can look to our past and see how God has taken care of us. How God has influenced us. God provided for them, and He can do the same for us. Where do you see God in your own life? Where do you see His provision, His care? How has He carried you along? Maybe you've not started that journey. And you need to dedicate yourself to Him. But you need to decide, I'm going to follow that path now. Maybe you've not died to yourself in baptism. And you need to do that. Maybe you've wandered from the path, chosen your own course, and it's time to go back to start again. Remember where you came from. Remember whose you are and what God has done for you. If there's anything we can do for you or any need that you have, we invite you to come forward as we stand and sing.